Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel. If you're just landing here, I'm a Fefe with Touch by Tarot and Beyond. I do a lot of political readings, and I also do a lot of spiritual work, especially for my membership community. Thank you so very much. There's a link in the description box below if you want to check that out. There's also a playlist if you want to see some of the topics. If you're not a member, you won't be able to see the videos, but you can see the kind of content that I offer in my membership. So please check that out. I'd love to have you on board. Um, and I'm also a former newspaper journalist, and I used to do a lot of political coverage. So this is kind of, very interesting to me. I love being here with you all and trying to give you good content and deeper insights into, as we go to the spirit guides and see what the heck is going on. I want to look at today. My guides are really pushing me. There is so much energy around Kushner right now, you all. There's some real energy around Khomeini's son, who we now know, like not only will there not be regime change, but we're understanding that his son, the Ayatollah's son, is like twice as hard, right? He's like even more hardline, we're hearing from reports, than his father was. So he's stepping up like, oh, you just wait and see. This is such a losing proposition. We're also understanding that at this point, even the IDF in Israel are, the defense ministers around Netanyahu are starting to like give him a side eye. Like, what's the game plan here? What's the exit strategy? Because if it was about regime change, clearly that's not about to happen. They do not want boots on the ground in that terrain. We understand it is so mountainous. It is so contrary to anything that outside forces would be able to go in and really get a foothold on your toehold on being able to launch something successfully. Not going to happen. So we're understanding the Israeli side, they're starting to question what the heck is going on. There's a reluctance there, and certainly here in the US, despite excuse me, despite Hegseth, just not even comprehending the stakes, or maybe comprehending the high stakes and the potential for lives lost, and just doesn't give a damn, right? But that's going to come back to haunt him as well. I'm going to look at that. The guys, so a couple of things the guys wanted me to come to you today with. One is a lot of this you all is starting to circle back to Kushner, because Kushner is the one who put so much in play in the Middle East around investments, around real estate, around the money that we know that he got from the Saudis, right? Around what we have seen is a potential, Spirit has said, a potential desire for the Trump clan, including Kushner et al., to eventually have an exit strategy if they needed to go into exile in the Middle East. We know even somebody like Tucker Carlson bought a house over there. So there's this, Spirit has said before, I've done readings on the long game was to avoid prosecution eventually here in the US. Would they be given protection and be able to go into exile? All of that now because of the position that the larger country, these countries in the Middle East are being put in. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, all of it, Dubai, we've seen all of these things happening. They're like, hold up, hold up. This is not what any of us agreed to. So now we understand that two things. Khomeini's son, this new leader of Iran, is saying, looking at Kushner, saying, yes, definitely Netanyahu, we're going to come for you. You're on our radar. Yes, Trump, call him Trump. You're on our radar, and we're going to get some payback for you. But the figure who is central to all of this, we're starting to hear, or at least what I'm hearing from my guides, is a lot of things are starting to circle back to Kushner. Because Kushner, on some levels, would be more accessible, perhaps, right? Perhaps. Entertainment purposes only, all right? So I want to go in on that. Spirit, is there a concerted effort to start targeting? Will Kushner be targeted? If this continues, will there be a concerted effort to target Kushner, Jared Kushner? not wishing anything, none of that, just looking at the instincts that my guides are giving me. We have the Three of Wands. There is growing sentiment to go after him. And I'm going to tell you that Three of Wands, that feels like a collective. I think this is not just about the new leader in Khomeini's son. I'm sorry, I forgot his name. This isn't just about him. This is about some conversations that are happening among the Middle Eastern countries in general that are saying, hold up, this was never a part of the things that we discussed. This was never about that. This was about money, transactions, crypto markets, all of that. This is not what we discussed. So I think there's growing support to stop Kushner. There's the Nine of Wands, growing support, persistence. Also, this is the determination in Iran. We're seeing it. They're not going to back down. They are not. The idea that this total surrender that Trump is talking about, not going to happen. And this is their determination to see it through and to persist. These people are nothing to play with. These countries are nothing to play with. Are they going to go after Kushner? If this continues, are they going to mount some sort of collective campaign to go after Kushner? I've got the Queen of Pentacles here. And the Chariot. I think Ivanka's starting to panic, you all. I think she's starting to panic. Is that who I'm seeing? Does she recognize that? Does she recognize, or would it even be her that they go after? Page of Pentacles, there is some sort of plan that it's not fleshed out yet, but there's some, look at that, even laying back thinking about it. And I think she's having more fears around that. The Chariot almost wanting to run, because remember, a part of this whole plan was to give them an exit strategy, to set them up real pretty so that the Saudis, etc., would say, hey, if things get too hot in the U.S., come on, we got your back. The Four of Wands. The Nine of Pentacles, the Eight of Wands. So they're talking to one another about these countries, these Middle Eastern countries are talking to one another about the cost and what it is costing them because of oil, clearly. The idea that in Tehran, we've seen now the oil, the blow-ups, the fuel facilities that was never supposed to be a part of the deal, was never supposed to happen. But the Eight of Wands is they are talking about Four of Wands, how to stick together in order to mount some sort of resistance. Iran is not going to be left to its own devices, you all. That's the bottom line that I'm seeing here. Now, to the question of whether they don't want the Four of Cups. They don't want, Spirit is telling me to back up a little bit. And I'll do that. I keep it real with you all. Sometimes I get my own hits or downloads, and that's why I go to the cards to flesh it out. They don't want to do that. They don't want, I think for whatever reason, many of the Saudis, etc., they honestly do have a rapport with Kushner. They've seen the ability to make money, and they believe that he can be instrumental still in manipulating the U.S., certainly manipulating Trump, who we know is in decline by the day. So they don't want to do that. Spirit, is this then more directed at Netanyahu and retaliation? Netanyahu and Trump? Is that what their focus is? Two of Pentacles, the two of them. Right now, the talk among these Middle Eastern states, or Middle Eastern countries, I should say, is more directed at Netanyahu on behalf of Israel and Trump on behalf of the U.S. And there's the magician. Okay, so that's settled. This is not just about retaliation by Iran, you all. What I'm seeing here is there is some sort of communication coalescing among these Middle Eastern countries where they are not going to sit back and allow Israel and the United States to dictate the terms of what happens to them. Because also, with all things coming back to money and oil, these other countries are going to be and are being impacted as well. They're coming after the two of them. Now, we understand that for whatever reason, Witkoff and Jarrett are on their way back to Israel to go and have a chat with Netanyahu to try and say, so, what do we do here, right? I think they're going begging versus really having any negotiating power, because Netanyahu has clearly gone off the deep end, and he's just all about some expansionist delusion, and thinking that he can do what he did in Gaza, he can have a repeat in Iran, and not happening. Spirit, please show me the outcome of the meeting between Netanyahu and Witkoff, and more importantly even Kushner, because they're going over there. I think it's this week. They're going back there to try and say, listen, how do we de-escalate? How do we exit? Because this whole idea of the U.S. just signed on for airstrikes, or that Netanyahu basically duped Trump into saying, listen, we just need your airstrikes. We need your, come in and symbolically, have this show of force, and then it won't go much beyond that. We'll get rid of Khomeini, and then it's gravy from there. All of this is completely going downhill. Spirit, what will be the outcome? Will Kushner and Witkoff be able to navigate something that de-escalates this effort, this attack? Will they? How will they come out of that meeting with Netanyahu, Witkoff, and Kushner? How will they come out of that meeting? We have the Three of Pentacles, so at least on the face of things, they're going to come out of it saying, hey, we're working together. We saw something in the news. I don't know if it was Trump who said it or who, but they said essentially it's going to be a collaborative decision between Netanyahu and the White House or Trump, on how to de-escalate and how to exit, what the end game is. So that's that. They're going to come back saying, we are working on it. Will that be true? Will Netanyahu recognize he's gone in, he's bitten off more than he can chew? And will he work with Ace of Swords? Whew, glad to see that. Ace of Swords. He knows this is a losing game. Him and Trump both know this is a losing game. And I think part of that was because I forget, some of you, please put it in the comments. There is an opposition leader here in exile in the United States that a lot of Iranian Americans here in America have been saying they would love to see him, if there's going to be a regime change, they'd love to see him back in charge or in charge in Iran. That's not happening. So they're realizing Netanyahu knows this is a losing proposition. And because of the mounting resistance, even among his military ranks, saying we can't do the ground game. So I'm going to go ahead and so they're going to come out of this meeting, Witkoff and Kushner saying, we're working together. We're working on a solution to getting an off-ramp, right? Getting some sort of exit strategy here. Netanyahu realizes he's bitten off more than he can chew. This is not feasible. He recognizes, I think part of what happens in this meeting is, let me confirm, that Witkoff has been told by, Daddy Trump, we can only do so much here. The bluster that we're hearing from him always, never admit defeat, that's one thing. But the reality of the situation is something different. The Page of Cups. What else, Spirit? and the high priestess. Okay, I get that. There's the plan is they want to hide the fact that they're losing, right? And that this was an unmitigated failure, right? They're never going to own up to that. Certainly not Netanyahu and certainly not Trump. They're not going to own up to that. But at the same time, they recognize that they are losing gazillions of dollars, right? We're hearing $1 billion alone in the U.S. We're hearing expenditures, who knows how many on the Israeli side of things. They're going to come out and recognize they've got to, that Page of Cups is going to be, let's continue. We don't want to harm our relationship or harm the appearance of our continued support for Israel, the U.S., but at the same time, we got to figure out a way to do this that we don't come out with the mud on our faces. So, Spirit, with this in mind, will we see troops on the ground, either from Israel or the U.S.? More importantly, I guess for our purposes, the U.S. Will there be troops on the ground? Is that the next step? Are they going to put troops on the ground? Queen of Swords, Judgment. I think this is Susie Wiles telling Trump, my gosh, man, oh man, you got to do something before it gets to that point. Or if you do that, recognizing that in the energy of judgment, it's like such a blast, it's got Pluto energy in it, like such a transformation of things going downhill. Remembering as well that I often see Susie Wiles as the Queen of Swords. She's said all along her end game or her long game is about the GOP being able to come out, what she hopes anyway, or is telling Trump, okay, in the midterms, saving the midterms. So she's saying exercise your judgment, because it's not just about the fact that you got sucked into this situation with Netanyahu, but keep your eye on what you were supposed to be doing here in the U.S. And if you put those boots, if you send troops in there on the ground, there's the temperance that comes to confirm that. That almost gives me a little bit of pause for concern, you all, because the energy in temperance is we're sometimes opposing forces or opposing interests have to come together to find a win-win, to find a solution. But this is also a card of moderation, pulling back, being careful. Trump is definitely being advised, and I do believe this is Susie Wiles, one of the few people who holds any, as in a feminine sense, that holds any sway with him. She's telling him, slow it down. And there's the devil. Okay. But see, that's ego. Is he going to disregard her? Will Trump disregard Susie's recommendation and move forward anyway? Because this is also bondage to Netanyahu. Nobody, unless you're living under a rock, right? Nobody is surprised anymore to wonder about why is he so loyal to Netanyahu? Why does he consistently allow himself to be used by him? Because he's got the goods on him with Epstein and probably a whole bunch of other stuff. So he feels bound to continue. Nine of Swords. Thank you, Spirit, for confirming. He feels bound to continue to follow Netanyahu's demands, to cave into his demands. Susie's trying to tell him, listen, you put boots on the ground, buddy, it's a wash. It's a wash. So he's trying to find a way to slow it down, but also recognizing he can't get away from what he knows that Netanyahu will do. Therefore, he's really relying on this energy that we saw before for Jared and Witkoff to go over there and somehow find a way to smooth things over with Netanyahu. So back to my original question, Spirit, please give me a definitive answer one way or another. Are we going to see troops, U.S. troops, on the ground in Iran? The moon. And the world. I don't think so. Well, I'll put it to you this way. I'm gonna tell you exactly what I'm getting in my gut. I think there may already be some there, because we also know the awful problem that we're having right now getting adequate reporting, and from media outlets, and many of us are having to go to international media outlets to get it. So I think this moon is saying there are some things that are already happening under the darkness of night, right, or being kept from us. There may already be certain forces there, or at the very least certain troops who have been put on alert that this could happen at any moment, that you actually have to go in. But then the world comes bringing that completion. This is, if he does this, if there are already troops there or shortly being sent there secretly, they're not clearly they don't want to announce ahead of time, make some ta-da. They want this secret. And part of the reason for that is, I was going to look at this as well. We understand that there was a 5-page bulletin that I think it was DHS was about to release to states, to local state law enforcement agencies, around heightened threats and risks to U.S. to strikes somehow, some unrest or just heightened levels of threats in here in the U.S. as a result of all of this. That the White House, they sent that report, DHS, and I think the FBI as well, sent that report to the White House, who said, pull it. Do not disseminate that information to the states. That is a part of what I think we're seeing here in this moon energy covering up, but also because it will come to an end. They're going to cover it up, but it has to come to an end. Because the one thing about the moon can also reveal what is hidden, right? It illuminates what is being hidden. There's the Knight of Swords. Information coming out. The Nine of Cups, people don't want it. And the Sun. Perfect. The desire to preserve life. And understanding that to the extent that military casualties are being underreported. I mean, do we really believe, all respect and how awful it is that anybody had to lose their lives as a result of this, literally playing with people's lives and families, etc. But they don't want. The moon hides or reveals, illuminates eventually out what's done in the darkness of night, and the sun brings life. The sun says, no, we're not going to do that. The Nine of Cups, it is the desire to preserve life. And I love, even in this image of the sun, see, she's banging that gong, right? It's the alarm, or the where we do, by hook or crook, whatever media outlets are able to get the real information, it comes out. And the states, as well as the states, will get their information around the heightened risks so that they can be prepared for any retaliation. And Spirit's telling me to go ahead and look at that. I looked at it a little bit last week. I'm mindful of the fact that we saw what happened in Mamdani's, the explosive devices that were lodged there. Now that was done, we understand, by the MAGA-esque, anti-Muslim folk. But the idea that even if that were to happen, Spirit just said, I heard from the guys, that check it out. It wouldn't be beyond belief that they could have someone who is far right do something like this, throw explosive devices or whatever, but then claim that it was somehow attached to Islamic or Muslim influence. Because that's part of what, I think that's part of what, let me stop. Spirit's like, stop thinking of Fefe and look at it. Come to us. Let us talk about it. All right. Spirit, please show me. In regards to elections and being able to overtake some executive action to either stop elections or slow them down or overtake them, control them, was the decision to pull this report. Do they want the heightened risks? They're telling me don't go so far as to say loss of life on U.S. soil. They're saying pull back off of that. But just heightening the anxiety to the point that they can justify influencing the elections. The Ace of Swords. Thank you, Spirit. Crystal clear, especially when it comes in swords, right? Communication, decisions, rationale, all of that. So that's what's happening. They want the heightened threats to remain long enough. And even after this comes to a head, right? And things de-escalate because they're going to have to. It's a losing proposition to continue this. They're going to continue to heighten the hype around retaliation and around the idea that, well, even though we pulled back, because of course he's going to claim that whatever he did was victorious, right? No matter what, it's going to be victorious. But the heightened threat around it, they want that to continue, you all. They definitely want that to continue. I also, last thing I want to look at is, are there more military casualties than we're being told? King of Cups. The generals know, right? These generals and these commanders who said point blank, there is no real threat. There is no viable threat. Are there more casualties than we've been told? Eight of Swords. Six of Cups, families. And the Lovers. And the Nine of Cups. There's a decision that they are worried about in terms of what to reveal to, because of families. And the idea that, we've been hearing some things around a draft, right? And I did not know this, maybe some of you did, that was actually a part of Project 2025. That there is language in that huge document, Project 2025, that called for implementing the draft for public high school seniors for 2 years, but seniors in private schools would be exempt from that. That was in Project 2020, or is in Project 2025, you all. The draft, the need for a draft. Now, why? Unless they knew that there were going to be a lot of military, there was going to be all this military escalation. Whether that was about expansionist propositions, Greenland, etc. Yeah, that's what they were planning to do. Now, will they do it? Spirit, are we going to see a draft? The World, the Nine of Wands, and the Moon. No, I don't think that this is going to go according to plan. The Moon, again, there is worry here. Worrying the Nine of Wands, overwhelming the American public, overwhelming people with the idea that not the idea, but the potential reality of having their sons and daughters, make the ultimate sacrifice for no reason in the world, because they do want world domination, or they are concerned about, this administration is very concerned about the influence that they know that they've lost tremendous influence around the globe, right? And they know that this cleanup behind that, like, they cannot even regain it. There is an end to a cycle of how the U.S. has operated and been a force, a supreme force in the global world. They understand that has come to an end. So to implement a draft on top of that, especially in an election year, I don't think. Five of Pentacles, people will not buy it. And they know people will not buy that. They know that's a bridge too far. Now, whether they will King of Pentacles, I think this is like this may be Hegseth, um, because also, thank you, Spirit. Also, we're going to see a lot of people within the military quit. Like as soon as they can get out, they're going to get out. There could even be, I'm hearing for psychological reasons, stress, all sorts of disorders and other anxiety, other things. There's going to be a depletion. Five of Pentacles. There's going to be a depletion in the armed forces. So that could also be why they were thinking ahead of time, we will need, how do we have more? But I'm also getting last thing that I didn't even plan on reading on this today, but I'm hearing it. um so we understand what's being done with Cuba, right? Completely try to do everything humanly diabolically possible to collapse their political leadership. We know that Rubio's basically been told, or his objective is he can go back and reclaim it as a Cuban American. We also understand that I saw a lot of reporting that said, especially in a stronghold of more wealthy Cubans who were exiled after Castro in Florida, that many of them have said, hey, if you can topple the regime in Cuba, by whatever means necessary, we might consider going back and rebuilding it, and therefore having American influence. But a lot of Cubans would love nothing more than the return to their homeland, but under a different guise. How that ties into military, I'm asking, is when we saw that world and this expansionist view of, because if the U.S. is diminished in Europe, and alienated so many of our allies, then is the plan to have something akin to that with near closer to our shores? Is there a plan to, they're saying that the plan is to get some of these Latin nations to sign on to fight drugs, right? To fight drug cartels. But is it deeper than that? That's what I want to look at. Spirit, is there a plan? This expansionism, is it to take over, to get military support for the U.S. from these other countries, these Latin countries? Two of Swords, Six of Swords. Yep, that's the plan going forward. And the Queen of Swords. There's, I don't know if that's Shine Bomb out of Mexico, which that wouldn't include her, but she's going to have something to say about it. And the Seven of Cups. Page of Pentacles, slow thinking about how to do that, and the Nine of Pentacles, because they'd have to make a lot of financial investments. We already now understand that there are a lot of, I don't know if it's the billionaire class, if it's companies, but Venezuela, which of course we're not hearing a whole lot about right now, but there are those who are starting to go into Venezuela economically, trying to take it, take while the fruit is ripe on the branches, to go in there and economically make some money off of Venezuela. That's what I'm getting here as well. This Nine of Pentacles, that they will, if you deplete and basically economically crush a country, such a strong and powerful country like Cuba. Many of you know that a lot of my training as an initiate, it was in Cuba. I actually, had ceremonies in Cuba. So very, very near and dear to my heart. But that's what's happening here. If you can go in and dangle the carrot economically, then you can also get the manpower to help militarily. That's the plan. All right, you all. I have said enough. I went on a little bit longer than I typically do, but there's just so much going on. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for your energy, your intelligence, your passion. I know it's a tough time, and we're all human. We all are influenced, and we feel collectively the energy. We're witnessing so much of this, and it's also so frustrating when we're in a place, in a moment in time, where it's hard to just even get the truth. Like, we're having to just work so hard to get access to valid information. So thank you all for hanging in there. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, sharing your passion, sharing your care and your love for one another. I love having a space in this platform to be able to foster that. I appreciate you so very, very much. And Let's keep our chins up and our shoulders back, right? This is the stakes are rising, rising, rising. But man, oh man, is the writing on the wall for the downfall of these folks. I will look later. I don't want to go on here, but I'm going to tell you this decision to not disseminate information about potential heightened risks here in the U.S. to local and state law enforcement agencies. This new guy, not new guy, but this Markwayne Mullen going to take over for Kristi Noem later this month. Like, yeah, MMA fighter, sure, you're qualified. Is he going to get confirmed by the Senate? I think so. Or yeah, he's going to go through the confirmation, but I'll look at that a little bit later. But my point that Spirit's reminding me in closing out is the repercussions for Patel, for Hegseth, for Mullen once he steps in and continues to toe the line. It's going to be something to watch happen, as we get into 2027. Things have to change, right? In government leadership, things have to change. But we're going to see it change. Wednesday, I don't want to go on here, but Wednesday I'm going to take a look. I'll make a note to myself. So now we know that Trump has threatened Thune in the Senate and basically said, if you don't figure this some way to get the SAVE Act passed, I'm not going to sign any more of your bills. Like, I'm not even sure what bills have been coming out these days. Like, what does Congress even do anymore, right? Like, I'm like, what bills? What bills? But there's, he's blackmailing them essentially and saying, if you don't do what I want you to do, don't expect anything from me. Want to check and see. We know the House is on board with that. Mike Johnson's like, cool, got you. But the filibuster and all of that, so far, Thune was like, I'm not down with that. I'm not going to do it. Let's see with the SAVE Act if in fact he's going to cave on that, because that will have a tremendous impact on the vote. The mail-in ballots that we know Trump wants to get rid of, voter ID, what that even means for especially women who have married and taken their spouse's name. Like, how do you prove? It's going to be a mess. But I'll take a look at that on Wednesday and let's see if in fact that's going to get passed, because if it does, like, states have got to get to work to help voters figure out how to best go about making sure that their votes are cast and counted. All right. I'll talk to you real soon. I didn't finish my little closing that so many of you like, and I'm glad that you do energetically. Chin up, shoulders back. Remember that only what you give power to has power over you. Right? At the end of the day, the soul part of you, who you really are, and what you believe, and what you're made of, and what you stand for, and what you continue to pray for and show up for. Nobody can take that from you. All right? I'll talk to you real soon. Bye.